Every traveler has that treasure chest of countries that come close to ideal, and today I am sure you will add one more to that list because we are finally in Croatia.
Welcome to one of the most beautiful countries in Europe. In this video we will embark on a journey along the scenic coastline of the Makarska Riviera, explore the charming islands of Hvar and Brač with their local flair, discover how olive oil was made in the ancient times, visit the unique Krka National Park with its breathtaking waterfalls, take a look at a couple of mountain lakes with the crystal clear waters, and dive into a medieval atmosphere of the historic city of Dubrovnik. Are you ready? Let's go! But before we start our journey, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Myroslav.
And I am Alyonka. We are from Ukraine and usually we travel around the world together.
But as you may have heard, our country is currently facing a full-scale war with Russia. And because of that, we have some restrictions to travel abroad. That's why I'll be staying at home behind the scenes.
And I will be the one who is going out to film all this beauty for you.
We're starting our journey from the already familiar Warsaw airport, flying with one of the popular low-cost airlines. And this time our companion is this blonde little cutie.
Max, give your godmother a little wave.
So yes, it's a family trip. Everyone takes their seats and the plane takes off. Normally you might skip over this part, but not this time. The mountainous landscape we'll be flying over is simply impossible to ignore, and even before reaching Croatia, we're already treated to breathtaking panoramas. By the way, take a look at this bridge, remember it, we'll come back to it later. And while we're flying, let's refresh our geography a bit, so we're all on the same page, so to speak. Croatia is located just across the sea from Italy, and it also kind of has a boot-like shape. But really, it's one big beach. And I'm not even joking. If you look at the map, you'll see a long stretch of coastline that starts up north near Slovenia and goes all the way down to the border with Montenegro. It's only interrupted in one spot, by a small strip of Bosnia and Herzegovina that reaches the sea. So we land surrounded by stunning islands and mountains in a city called Dubrovnik. The airport somehow reminded me of Tirana in Albania, where we've also been. Like all our trips abroad, this one also starts with renting a car for 75 euros with insurance. And this little diesel rumbler is going to take us to all the local beauties. Maybe it's not the perfect family car, but just look how great it looks against this backdrop. By the way, the views here are going to be unreal.
And for today we have a destination planned that draws many travelers to Croatia, an incredibly beautiful city with a rich history located in the south of the country. And, as you have probably guessed, it's Dubrovnik.
Let's start with how this city even came to be. The old town itself is located on a small island, and thanks to its strategically perfect location, it was simply too good not to use. Local merchants and traders quickly saw the potential. They built a port and started importing goods, especially valuable resources from nearby countries. The main ones were precious metals and salt. If you take a close look at the building facades, you'll notice that some of the coats of arms and seals from those early traders have actually survived to this day. Business was booming. In fact, they even had a monopoly on some of the resources, which meant big profits. Naturally, that raised the question of defense. And if you look at Dubrovnik from above, it's clear this place was a real fortress. And that brings us to an interesting little story. You know the saying, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, according to history, the Venetians had plans to build their own fortress right here in the early 11th century, with the goal of taking control over Dubrovnik. But the locals caught wind of the idea and acted fast. They decided to build their own fortification on the cliff to protect themselves from unwanted guests. One version of the story says they built the stone wall in just 2 or 3 months. But here's the clever part, the wall was only about 60 centimeters thick, way too thin to withstand any serious battle. Normally, defensive walls had to be at least a couple of meters thick. So, when the Venetians finally arrived with ships full of building materials, they saw the defensive structures already standing and had no choice but to turn around and sail back home.
Dubrovnik is one of the most beautiful cities in Croatia, if not all of Europe, because its narrow streets, stone houses, and rooftops as red as pomegranate create the most magical atmosphere.
The demand for Dubrovnik among tourists is insane. If you look closely at the ground, you'll notice that in some places the stone has actually turned glossy, polished by the endless stream of curious visitors. But it's no wonder, really. The city is packed with so many fascinating things that even 5 full episodes wouldn't be enough to cover it all. But anyway, we'll try to show you some of the highlights. And let's start with the big one, Game of Thrones. Several spots in the city were used as filming locations for HBO's massively popular series, and fans from around the world come here just to walk through those iconic scenes.
By the way, some scenes of Game of Thrones were filmed in Dubrovnik. The most attentive among you have noticed that these are the very same steps from the iconic scene where the cunning and ruthless Cersei Lannister walked completely naked through the infamous Walk of Shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Honestly, if I were in your place, I'd show that girls should never be insulted or humiliated.
These famous steps are located at the base of St. Ignatius Church. Though judging by the number of people trying to take a photo there, I'm pretty sure you won't have any trouble finding them. These days, instead of an angry crowd like in the show, the square is filled with the cozy cafes, and you can grab a table with a perfect view of the staircase. Of course, this is just one of the filming locations. If you look a bit closer, you'll find many more, like the textured stone railings from that same iconic scene.
To be honest, walking through the city feels like strolling through one big open-air museum. I'm not even surprised that filmmakers choose Dubrovnik as the backdrop for this epic saga.
Back in medieval times, the locals made their money selling salt and metals. But these days, they're cashing in on their very own Disney-style kingdom by selling Game of Thrones merch. We stepped into one of those shops and honestly, it gave me total Harry Potter vibes. The whole setup is designed to make you want to buy something. And to be fair, the selection is pretty impressive, from pins, pendants and magnets to t-shirts and giant mugs. By the way, those mugs, I really like them. And of course, if you buy something, you can snap a photo on the Iron Throne. Plus, there are plenty of cool props and decorations all around.
Another amazing fact about Dubrovnik is that all fountains here provide drinking water. Why is that? Long time ago, that tall tower you see was built as a reservoir to collect fresh mountain water from the rivers. Later, the constructor pipes integrated into the city's fortifications connected them to the fountains. This way, the entire population had access to clean, drinkable water. Unfortunately, the original fountain was destroyed over time, but later restored. And to this day, fresh drinking water still flows here. So, thirsty tourists can always refill bottles and save €250 for a small bottle.
The Onofrio fountain looks stunning. Just look at the little mascarons decorating every single spout.
At the top of this fountain there used to be 12 animal statues. Unfortunately, only one has survived to this day, the statue of a dog, a Labrador.
And just a short distance away stands another gem, the Ammerling fountain. Unlike the first, this one is adorned with sculpted fish spouting water instead of mascarons. With the sea as a backdrop and sunlight shimmering on the surface, it's a sight that's truly hard not to admire.
The city of Dubrovnik is a true feast for the eyes. If the crowds feels overwhelming, just turn into any of the smaller side streets and wander around the narrow alleys and stairways. Just look at the stunning view you'll find there. The red tiled rooftops, laundries swaying in the breeze, flowers everywhere, and the sound of a local radio drifting from open windows. Someone was even watching Game of Thrones. Honestly, it's a pure bliss. I can't get enough of it.
To me personally, Dubrovnik feels like a mix of Venice and Naples. A place where you want just to switch off your mind and melt into its warm, inviting atmosphere. While wandering through the narrow streets, we unexpectedly came across some curious little extensions above the windows. At first, we thought they were meant for hanging laundry, but nope. It turns out that back in the day, people would slide in a pulley system there to lift items that couldn't fit through the narrow corridors below. Unfortunately, Croatia's history also holds a tragic chapter that simply can't be skipped if you want to truly understand the country. In 1991, the struggle for independence from Yugoslavia began. We won't go deep into the details here as it's a vast and complex topic, but what I will say is that the war was long and extremely brutal. It's hard to believe, but even here in Dubrovnik over half of buildings were damaged or destroyed during the Serbian bombings. And that brings us to one interesting story.
So, here is the story of the man who lived in this house. He lived there with his 99-year-old mother. In December 1991, the Serbs dropped a phosphorus bomb on this house. It immediately burst into flames. He managed to save himself and his mother, but then decided to run back to grab a few belongings. Of course, he tried to put out the fire, but with the flames at size, it was impossible. He put a pot on his head, wrapped himself in a blanket to protect his skin, and went back into the burning house to retrieve his passport, some money, and a few essential things. When he came out into the street, a photographer captured his picture. And in that moment, he wasn't crying, he was smiling. He raised his fist with a big gesture, as if to say, "I've lost everything, but the most important thing remains, my freedom." It's also very symbolic that the plaque here says, "Freedom is not for sale for all the gold in the world," written in many languages except Russian.
Let me draw your attention for just a moment. I'd like to invite you to subscribe our channel.
For you, it's just a single click, but for us, it's really important.
This way we can grow our channel and bring together an amazing community of travelers.
Please subscribe!
Yeah. If you thought that was all, not so fast. There's still one final treat, so to speak, without which the picture of Dubrovnik wouldn't be complete. So, Alyonka decided to treat herself to a little adventure, a ride up to a panoramic viewpoint. There are two ways to get there. On foot, which lets you enjoy all the sights along the way and is completely free, or by cable car, which costs 17 euros one way. We chose the second option since we were a bit short on time. Sure, it's not exactly cheap, but the views from the top are worth every cent. And then, as the sun began to glow with shades of red, the whole panorama lit up with the new colors. That was the magic moment. Truly breathtaking. The next day, we set off for the place where we'd be spending the rest of our journey, a small seaside village called Drasnice.
Alright then, everyone's on board, it seems like we didn't forget anyone, and our next stop is Makarska Riviera.
I'm sure many of you have heard about the legendary infrastructure of Switzerland or Norway. Endless tunnels, jaw-dropping bridges, but guess what? Croatia has a few impressive feats of its own to show off.
In Croatia, aside from beaches and mountain ranges, there are plenty of different bridges connecting various parts of mainland and the islands of the seaside country. Right now we are standing by one of those bridges, the one named after Croatia's first president Franjo Tudjman.
It's no small thing. The bridge stands 141 meters tall and stretches over half a kilometer in length. And yes, believe it or not, there's an even more spectacular structure still ahead.
It seems there is nothing special, every country has its own bridges, but just look at this view, there's such a panorama here. Look at how many small yachts, speedboards that sail along this coast. Behind them stretches a trail of bubbles, those mountains in the background. And behind them also begins Dubrovnik, so here is a very cool panorama.
I can confidently say that Croatia is one of those countries you absolutely should explore by car. The winding mountain roads, the sea dotted with thousands of islands, the charming little towns along the way. All of it pieces together into a perfect road trip puzzle. And now here comes an engineering structure so massive that you can even spot it from a plane. Remember, at the beginning of the video I asked you to keep an eye for something. Well, this is it, the Pelješki Bridge.
If you look carefully at the map, you can see that the coast of Croatia, or rather the country itself, is divided by the piece of Bosnia, which has also wanted its own access to the sea. And the Croats built a huge Pelješki bridge to unite parts of their country.
Its scale is truly impressive, stretching a record-breaking 2.4 kilometers in length and standing 54 meters tall. Sure, it's not as tall as the Franjo Tudjman Bridge, but unlike that one, this bridge spans the sea rather than hilltops. During its construction, the key requirement was to ensure enough clearance for ships heading to that small stretch of Bosnia that has access to the sea.
What a panorama opens up here with these mountains in the background. When the sun rises, these mountains are of different colors, and behind them is Bosnia. I think this is one of the top locations for cool photos.
Bridges are great, but it was time to keep moving. And the more I looked at all this footage, the more I realized. If I were on this trip, we probably wouldn't have made it anywhere. We'd just be stopping every 5 minutes to film all these stunning mountains, islands, rivers, and that's not even counting the drone shots, which I'd get completely lost in. But since I'm not there yet, I invite you to simply enjoy the sunset that welcomed us as we arrived to Makarska Riviera. New day, new morning. And that means it's time to tell you a bit about where we're staying. But first, we need to fuel up with some porridge for breakfast alongside this blue-eyed cutie. So, Drasnice is a small village with only about 286 residents during the low season. By Kyiv standards, that's basically like one 25-story apartment building. But here things are different. Instead of skyscrapers, huge mountains take their place, which really remind me our trip to Albania. By the way, Albania is so underrated country in my opinion. Talking about hotel prices doesn't make much sense, because it all depends on the number of rooms and the season. For example, August is the most expensive time because all Europeans go on vacation, so it's better to visit either before August or after. And don't worry, even in autumn the weather stays warm here and you can still swim in October. By the way, speaking of beaches,
I want to say that we like this beach in Drasnice because, firstly, there is unbeatable view of the rocks. Secondly, the water is very clear. There is no algae, no jellyfish. Even when you swim to the deeps, it's wonderful. And also because there are almost not people on the beach, or there are very few of them, there are so many fish here. Even when you are standing waist deep in water, there are plenty of very large fish here, because there are bubbles here near which schools of fish gather. Actually, it's such entertainment, pleasure and completely relaxation.
you might be wondering, what is there to do in such a small village? Well, basically nothing else but to enjoy the surrounding nature, swim and paddleboard. whole different story is the district center Makarska. By local standards, it's practically a metropolis with over 13,000 residents. There's a beautiful waterfront lined with dozens of luxury yachts of all sizes. You can find cafes and restaurants to suit any taste, or stroll through local parks while admiring the architecture, which is here too. But of course, there's a flip side – the people. During the high season, the place is fully packed with tourists and the beaches feel like a can of sardines. As you can imagine, finding a free spot to lay down your towel is a real challenge, almost like a mission impossible. So in that sense, it reminds me a lot of our hometown beaches in Ukraine. That's why we decided to move on to another location, one that's also very popular on the Makarska Riviera. It's also worth mentioning that both Drasnice and Makarska are conveniently located, close to many of the region's most popular tourist spots, which helps us save a lot of time on the road. Meanwhile, we arrived at Krka National Park.
We have already arrived at our location today. It's really interesting that there is a super touristic place, but there is a lot of free parking space here. However, unfortunately, we didn't find a free space for us and park our car at the very entrance. But I need to say the price is very cheap, because 1.2 euro per hour seems like a penny to me compared to, for example, Dubrovnik.
Krka National Park is a massive area, 109 square kilometers of pure natural beauty, which means there are countless entrances, roads and trails to explore. We'll show you just one of the ways in, and to get to the famous waterfalls, the main reason everyone comes here, you actually hop on one of these little scenic boats. The entrance ticket costs 30 euros. Yeah, not exactly cheap, especially if you're with a big group, but it does include the boat ride. And let me tell you, the experience is worth every single cent.
Guys, how beautiful is here! While everyone was sitting in the central part of the boat, I decided to go to the bow. There were also some benches here that were empty. I look at the river and I'm simply shocked. What a beautiful emerald color it is! There are so many different swans in the water, some ducks are flying, swimming, diving, and some other birds are flying. And how much greenery is around! I am simply shocked. Our boat has already sailed to a kind of parking lot, and I can already see the first waterfall from afar, and I really want to see it up closer.
So, after stepping off the boat, we head straight into exploring the park itself. And right away, we're welcomed by these charming wooden boardwalks that wind through nature like something out of a fairy tale.
So, we have already visited many beautiful islands and various beaches. It's time to visit the national park, which is one of the most beautiful in Croatia.
And the very first thing you notice is the explosion of wildlife. The flora and fauna here are thriving. That's because the park is home to more than 222 species of birds and 18 kinds of fish. Plus, tons of feathered travelers stop here during their spring and autumn migrations. So, if you're into bird photography, this place is an absolute goldmine. You might even spot this stunning European bee-eater, exotic looking as it is, which actually lives in Ukraine too. Looks like these little tigers here are definitely not locals.
She's scary. Oh, you're so cute, girl. With your mommy.
But in the end, we came here to witness one of nature's true masterpieces, the mighty Skredinsky Bug, the largest waterfall in the national park.
I'm so excited, just look at the size of this beauty, it's really huge. Last year we were at Plitvice Lakes, and as I remember, there are no such big waterfalls there. I think this is the biggest waterfall I've ever seen in my life. God, it's so big, I'm in shock.
Skredinsky Bug is truly jaw-dropping. Millions of liters of water crash down from an intricate cascade system, with a total drop of 45 meters, creating shimmering lakes and emerald-colored lagoons.
By the way, a couple of years ago you could swim here. Yes, right here, near this waterfall. However, unfortunately it was banned in 2021, and that's it, now you just can watch with your eyes.
Apart from the waterfall that draws everyone in, the park is crisscrossed by an incredible number of walking trails and other interesting spots, like museums, which we'll be popping into together.
Another scene that made the Krka National Park famous is Nikola Tesla. Yes, that scientist who worked on various electrical devices and whose name Elon Musk put on his car. Well, it turns out that here in Croatia is one of the oldest power plants in the world. It was built in 1895 by the project of the same famous scientist Nikola Tesla.
In addition to the power stations, you can also see much older technologies that harnessed the river's flow. We're talking about water mills. The principle of their operation is explained in detail, showing how grain was ground into flour using a heavy stone wheel. But what's even more fascinating is that the first mills appeared here as early as the 12th century. Sometimes all the rivers around would dry up, except for the Krka. And because of the high demand, local farmers had to queue for their turn, sometimes waiting for several days. Amazingly, many of these mills operated for centuries, and the last one only stopped running in the 1970s.
I'm walking around the park in such delight, I'm impressed. It all seems like some kind of fairy tale to me. All those trees leaning, this water, these streams flowing, these fish. It all seems kind of unreal to me. I don't know how to describe it all except as a fairy tale. I really like this place.
If you're an experienced traveler, you probably know that one of the most famous places in Croatia is Plitvice Lakes National Park, which is often compared to Krka. In my opinion, these are two very different natural gems, and if someone asks which one is better to visit, the answer is simple: both are worth of it. But be careful, it's easy to get so captivated that you completely lost track of time.
Do you know what shooting is? It's when you're always late for the last thing. It could be the last boat, the last ferry, or the last train. Anyways, those are all options about me. I always think I can do it in 2 hours and then I'm flying over.
So if you're planning a trip, you can safely dedicate a whole day to this location. You definitely won't regret it. The next morning, we woke up early and set off on our next adventure. But first, we had to make our way back to Makarska, a place we've already mentioned briefly. I'm not sure if I said this before, but one of the great bonuses of early mornings in Croatia is the stunning scenery and panoramic views that reveal themselves with every new twist of the mountain road. I'm telling you, for drivers, this country is nothing short of a fairy tale. Returned to Makarska, not to explore the town but to board a ferry, or more precisely to drive onto it with our car. Just like in Norway and other countries with many islands, ferry connections here are well developed. After your tickets are checked, you can drive onto the vessel, but drivers have to do this without passengers, because the car decks get so packed that only one side of the doors opens. Here's an important tip about tickets. First, you should buy them in advance, as they sell out weeks ahead. Second, you need to print out your ticket. And third, there's an official website where tickets are sold. All the other sites are aggregators that charge extra fees for reselling. We'll leave the link to the official site in the video description.
In Croatia, as in Greece, there are many islands located along the entire coast. I think that could be filmed in a separate video actually, but today we have visited another pearl of Adriatic Sea. It will be the island of Brač.
The ferry price consists of two parts, a ticket for the car and a ticket for each passenger. In our case, it costs 25 euros for the vehicle and 6 euros for each person, and that's just for a one-way trip. We arrive on the island at the port of the town of Sumartin, And as strange as it may seem, many of the locations we plan to visit are on the opposite side of the island, so thanks to the magic of editing, we simply teleport there.
Our first location is a town with an interesting and unusual name, Supetar. If you look at the map, you might wonder why we are here, because we have sailed to a completely different part of the island. But who we are to sail to an island and not to show you one of the best towns in this place?
Supetar is a small fishing town, which might explain why you can find plenty of cats roaming its streets. It's also the main tourist hub where most visitors arrive on the island, mainly because the fairly large and popular Croatian city of Split is just 15 kilometers away.
Oh my god, what a cool promenade! It overlooks the Croatian mainland, and these mountains, the cliffs that stand above the water, they're just incredible and impressive.
Well, Supetar, like many other small Croatian towns, has all the classic tourist visuals. A long waterfront lined with countless boats, historic buildings and old architecture, narrow streets that look like they belong on postcards and just beg to be photographed, and of course, its local tourist attractions.
And the main calling card of the city is probably this church of St. Peter, because it can be seen from any part of the city. It looks like the tallest building in the city. It was built in the 17th century. By the way, it is interesting that in Hvar I saw a similar church in the Baroque style. And it also had a metal doors with hand carvings. It's probably not carvings because the carvings are made from wood, but I think you understood me. This is the first time I have seen such doors in churches.
To sum it up, Supetar offers places to stroll and sights to see, but visiting the island just for this town might not be worth it, unlike our next stop, that is. One bonus is that this village is quite close to Supetar, but I bet you won't even notice the time passing, thanks to the stunning views of the mountain range on mainland Croatia.
Just 15 minutes of incredibly picturesque road and we arrive in the village of Škrip Museum. Judging by Wikipedia, this village has about 20 people living there, so it really sounds like a museum. The name of Škrip itself comes from the Latin words of scorpus, which means sharp, bare rocks. And this is not surprising at all, as the village itself is situated in the midst of rocky hills. The roofs of these houses remind me of fish scales. Actually, we also have a similar masonry in Ukraine, which was made without auxiliary materials, but it was wooden, it was gonta. And here, as you see on the island, it was made of stone.
Besides its stone buildings and historic architecture, Škrip is also known for its olive groves and a local craft museum, which we will visit together.
In our last episode about Greece, we talked about how the biggest producers of olive oil are Greece, Italy and Spain. But it turns out Croatia isn't that far behind. So we came to the olive oil museum and now we are about to hear the story.
So the whole process starts with gardeners harvesting black olives at the end of November. By the way, black olives are not just green ones that have been dyed, as many might think, but fully ripe fruits. Green olives turn yellow under the sun and then finally black. This roller was used to press out the oil with a capacity of 350 kilograms in 10 hours, while modern electric machines can produce 3 tons in just 1 hour. Obviously, due to this significant advantage, everyone switched to modern processing, where the most physical effort is simply pressing the start button. In the traditional method, to make the roller work, it had to be turned manually, as the tourists did in our case.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, start! Push! Now the rest of you guys, you can clap, you can hear the ball, it's not a problem.
Next, the olive paste was placed into special baskets or bags, call them what you will, and pressed. An unusual feature of the process was that the oil was transported not in barrels, but in sheepskins, used as containers. By the way, to the touch, the skin feels like plastic, but once liquid gets inside, it immediately becomes flexible and soft. For several generations, this family operated the production, built houses, and grew olives. The last oil from this family-run process was made in 1963, after which everything was naturally replaced by modern machines. And if you thought that was the entire tour, think again. On top of that, we were all treated to homemade products, mostly grown by local farmers, everything from ham, cheeses and pâtés to delicious bread and oil. There's no time for endless compliments, so just take my word for it. It was tasty and, most importantly, fascinating.
So, my takeaways from the tour. First of all, I really liked that it was interactive. Instead of just telling us some dry facts, the guide made it super engaging and even got different people involved. Second, I love that this place actually has its own story. A couple once lived here and ran an olive oil. Then, in the 1960s, they had to shut down production because of industrialization. But in 2013, the place reopened as a museum, so the story kept going. There are old photos of the owners, lots of original tools, and honestly, it's fascinating. And of course, the highlight was the tasting. It's not free, but it was so worth it, delicious and filling. As soon as the tour ended, the table was already set and everything was just amazing. So I definitely recommend it. If you're ever on the island of Brač, make sure to visit this farm.
Next we head back south on the island, retracing a few zigzags and passing some stunning villas, and we're already at our next stop.
For our last stop on the island of Brač, unfortunately we didn't have much time left, but this is actually the place the most tourists come here for. The real treasure of the island, the famous Golden Horn, located at the very southern tip of Brač. Honestly, it's the number one reason people travel to this island.
Calling this place popular would be an understatement, and judging by the number of windsurfers, the nature around and the wind makes it a true paradise for water sports. By the way, we should definitely keep in mind to try these activities with Alyonka in the future.
The entire shoreline of this beach is surrounded by pine trees, created a beautiful forest backdrop. Then, as the trees fade out, the coast turns into a stretch of white pebbles. From above, it looks like a golden horn, that's where the name comes from. The shape resembles a horn, and the bright white stone give it that golden glow. What's really fascinating is that we walked right to the very tip of this horn, and if you look on the one side behind me, there are small waves, while on the another side it's completely calm. So this horn split the coast into extreme side and the calm one. What I want to summarize is that this beach is very touristy spot. You'll find absolutely everything here, all kinds of water sports, cafes, coffee bars, full facilities, parking and restrooms. Honestly, I'd recommend coming here not just for a quick visit, but to actually stay and enjoy it. Try sailing, paddleboarding, windsurfing, basically squeeze out every bit of fun this place has to offer. But if you're only planning to take a ferry to the island and spend just a couple of hours here, I'd say it's probably not worth it. The beach where we were staying also had a crystal clear water and beautiful views. Still, if you are decided to spend a few days on Brač, this is definitely a top spot. Perfect for photos, relaxation and experiencing the island's best vibes to the fullest.
On the way back, we were rushing so much that we barely made it to our ferry. Our car just squeezed into the last spot. Luckily, we were fortunate enough not to have to spend the night on the island, and we returned home safely. The next day, we decided to explore a bit of the mainland Croatian coast, curious about what we might find there. While driving, we noticed uprooted trees among the mountains and hills, but it turned out to be entire hectares of burnt forests, and wildfires can be quite severe here during the summer. Luckily, we were fortunate not to encounter this natural disaster during our trip.
So here we are. Behind me is one of the most beautiful pebble beaches in the world. It's located in a protected area on a pine-covered cape. At one point, the American magazine Forbes even ranked it among the top 10 best beaches in the world. Just so you get the picture, that list featured the Maldives, Brazil, France and this beach right here in Croatia. So, let's find out what made it win the hearts of people all around the world.
We hadn't even made it to the beach yet when the local fluffballs started greeting us. And there were quite a few of them. Such a tail-wagging gathering can be explained by the abundance of pine trees and cones around. And if you look closely, their color is much darker than ours. We didn't have any nuts with us, so we carried on our way.
Just look at how dense these pine trees are. There are squirrels running around, cicadas chirping, all of it right by the sea. And honestly, I can't imagine a better nature umbrella on a hot sunny day.
Alright, let's start ticking off on our fingers what makes Punta Rata so awesome. Crystal clear water through which you can see not only fish but even a pedicure. Check. The color of the sea. Check. By the way, it's so stunning that it's a good thing I wasn't there with Alyonka, or she would have already made me a full photo shoot. Infrastructure, including all the parking, showers and toilets. Check. A panorama of the mountain range against the backdrop of the sea. Check. A dense green forest with the fluffy fir trees. Check. Also, tourists love hanging hammocks between them, and if you film from one of those, it feels like a shot from a net or a music video. Oh, and it turned out that Alyonka just plopped herself down in someone else's hammock, thinking it was public. I bet the owners were shocked by such audacity. And finally, the cliffs stretching along the beach, which deserve an extra hour for a photo session, if you are there with your loved one. But all of the above is a kind of standard for Croatia, so it's interesting what makes this place stand out from the rest.
And one of the most famous symbols of this beach is a huge rocky islet known as the Umbrella Stone. It has become not only the symbol of this beach but also of the whole town. The water is here so crystal clear that it looks like if the rock is levitating in the air rather than anchored in the sea.
The divers around had practically swarmed this boulder, and it's no wonder. The water is so clear that I wouldn't mind swimming there myself. But we need to move on to our next location.
We've already explored a bit of Croatian's coastline, and now I suggest we head a little higher into the mountains to a town called Imotski, because there are a couple of really interesting spots waiting for us there.
Every time we travel from one place to another, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that such a panorama surround you almost everywhere along the Croatian coast. Mountains and sea are definitely a love story. And to reach the town of Imotski, we have to cross a mountain range, all for the sake of two natural gems.
Just outside Imotski there is a red lake and it's absolutely breathtaking. Just look at this massive crater, I'm in shock, it doesn't even seem like a lake.
Alyonka doesn't fly FPV drones yet, so I had to borrow this clip so you could better immerse yourself in the atmosphere of this natural wonder. The Red Lake is a unique phenomenon, as it was formed by the collapse of a massive underground cave, and according to Wikipedia, it lies in the largest sinkhole in the world. Though I think you could tell that anyway, since it's surrounded by giant cliffs 240 meters high, with another 240 meters going deep down. It's also home to endemics, unique species of fish found only in this area and nowhere else in the world. As for the lake's color, guidebooks say it's red due to the presence of iron oxide. To me, it looks like an ordinary dark blue.
The lake is truly impressive in its scale. I mean, just look at the huge crater it sits in. It really looks unreal, like it couldn't have formed naturally. I also love the panorama around the lake. On the one side there is the water with its caves, and behind me the mountains rise up. It's honestly stunning here.
The panoramas are truly stunning, but we'd fallen behind schedule and needed to make it to one more location before sunset. It's just a couple of kilometers away, and you won't believe it, but it's also a lake, only a bit different.
I'm just in shock. I've only just started my hike and I'm already met with incredible panorama. The views here are absolutely stunning. First, let me show you the cliff right in front of me. I can't see the lake yet, but I see those rocks. You really feel like a tiny speck in this enormous crater.
The viewing platform has specially designated observation points that offer the widest possible view of the surroundings. From here, it's easy to see that, unlike the Red Lake, this one has a well-equipped tourist trail that allows you to descend all the way to the very bottom, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
To get down to the Blue Lake, it's not just a short walk, you have to hike a bit. But there is a trekking path here and it's really scenic. Cicadas are buzzing, pine trees all around. I'm still a bit anxious because the sun is setting and I hope I'll get to see the lake's true color, which already looks unreal from above, that amazing shape of blue. By the way, the trail itself, it's very easy. We're even walking with my little nephew who is 2.5 years old, and so far everything is good. But these views are absolutely incredible. I honestly feel like I'm in a movie.
Yes, it's really hard to disagree with Alyonka here. The sunset is pure magic, unbelievably beautiful. Let's get back to our Blue Lake. It wasn't formed artificially, but as a result of a cave collapse, which was quickly filled with the water flowing down from the surrounding mountains. What's interesting is that the lake can drastically change its size and depth. For example, in 1914, due to heavy rainfall, the water level rose by as much as 114 meters, almost reaching the southern edge of the cliffs.
Honestly, I wasn't expecting anything like this when I read about the lake on Google. I feel like I'm somewhere in USA. There is no way this should be in Croatia.
Almost down at the lake, you start to realize just how majestic nature is, and how small we are in it, like tiny grains of sand, especially when you're surrounded by such enormous cliffs. We didn't come here for nothing. After such a long journey, we naturally wanted to swim.
Wow, the water is so warm, I didn't expect that at all. But seriously, why did we forget our swimsuits?
But not only had the girls forgotten their swimsuits, it also seemed like someone had turned off the heating in the lake. After shots like this, you realize that truly great places do require a bit of effort. But in the end, there is always a reward waiting for you.
Don't make our mistake. Don't come here without swimsuits, because coming to this lake and not taking a dip is just a crime.
On the way back, we were greeted by a magical moon hanging over the mountain bridges, which lay on the horizon like waves. The next day, another journey awaited us. We'd saved Hvar for dessert, an island you simply can't pass by. So, following the process you already know, we had to navigate a couple of serpentines and reach the port where, as per tradition, we switched to a ferry. The only difference was that the departure point for this island wasn't Makarska, as before, but Dubrovnik. And here, the ferry was a bit of a different size, I'd call it king size, so there was no need to worry about not fitting in.
Ferries in Croatia don't just carry cars, they carry you on your own 2 feet too. That's why I think you absolutely have to take at least one sea cruise, just for the atmosphere and that magical feeling of the sea. It's an incredible experience. The ocean breeze on your face, the seagulls following the ferry, and the untouchable cliffs where only local birds live. It's so romantic and atmospheric. The perfect way to spend time, explore and make unforgettable memories.
So, upon arriving on the island, we were on the move again. Yes, I think you've already realized that we're not exactly your typical tourists, and the phrase "ants in our pants" pretty much sums us up. That's because our planned stop was on the opposite side of the island from where we docked, but considering the scenery along the way, the drive was more than worth it. And we arrived in a town, you won't believe it, but it's also called Hvar. Clearly, naming things isn't their strong suit, all that's left is to name the fortress Fortress. But here they got a bit more creative and called it Fortica. Jokes aside though, the place truly has things that will amaze you, yet some of them are downright jaw-dropping. Despite the town's name, Hvar is the heart of the island. It's quite small, with a population of only about 4,000, But we came here to stroll through its narrow streets and admire the ancient architecture. And there's definitely plenty here worth seeing.
Probably the first place you'll definitely see is the St. Stephen's Cathedral, because all the main streets leads to it. No matter where you wander, you will end up hidden there. By the way, it's really charming. I especially love the bell tower, which must have an amazing panorama. Too bad you can't go up there.
As for the bell tower, it was the first to appear here, built back in the distant 15th century. And if you come closer, you can spot quite a lot of intricate details on the cathedral's facade. But to me, the biggest attention grabber is those massive doors.
I don't think it's enough to admire this church from a distance, you really have to come closer. I did, and honestly, I got stuck there for about 15 minutes. I started noting so many little details. The doors are especially fascinating. There are metal with entire stories of monks covered into them. Everything feels so authentic, and I really loved it. To be honest, during the day the central square gets really hot, which makes the narrow side streets even more inviting. First of all, there is this instant cool breeze, almost like stepping into an air-conditioned room. Second, the architecture here is truly beautiful and historical. Almost every building has a plaque telling its story or about archaeological finds discovered there. You also hear little fountains trickling in the background. If you keep turning right, you'll eventually find stairways leading upward, and the higher you climb, the prettier it gets. Along the way, there are cafes tucked into corners, just calling you to sit down for an iced coffee. Oh, just look at the streets, just look at them. Another building you'll definitely have noticed on the square is the Arsenal. Despite the name, it has nothing to do with weapons. If I am not mistaken, back in 14th century it was used as a dock for galleys, and later it was transformed into a kind of museum complex with a theater.
The arsenal might not look particularly impressive from an architectural standpoint, but its uniqueness lies elsewhere. It was one of the very first public theaters in Europe, welcoming not only nobles but also ordinary people, who could pay not with money but with a bucket of freshly caught fish. The idea was to let culture reach the wider public.
And of course, the main architecture highlight of this town is the fortress up on the hill. Max, show exactly where it is on the hill. You just can't miss it, so we decided to go up there, but not on foot. There actually is a hiking trail, but we chose to drive instead. Luckily, there is parking here and it's... Max! Because there is parking here and we even found a free spot. By the way, it only took us about 4 minutes to drive up from the town. Really. Right? Right.
Before entering the fortress, I need to show you why this climb is truly worth it. And the emotions of a child are something that can't be faked.
What a beautiful view! I am shocked! Max, look! What is that over there?
I have to say, this is hands down one of the most breathtaking viewpoints we've come across in all of the Croatia. The sea stretches endlessly, islands scattered like jewels, dozens of tiny yachts sailing around, and the mountains rising in the background. It all comes together like a postcard brought to life.
So we just parked the car, left it, and I immediately walked over here, and wow, what a view! As my husband says, this blows your mind, and it really does. It's absolutely gorgeous, so many islands inside, with boats and yachts moving quickly across the water. The sunset make it even more magical. Honestly, it's just wow, wow, wow. I also noticed that the local architecture in Hvar really stands out with its red tiled rooftops. And when you climbed up to the fortress, you get this amazing view over the town of Hvar, which is the heart of the island. I just love how all these little houses with red roofs look from above. So charming!
So we decided to drop by the fortress itself. The entrance fee was only $12, but for us it was free since it was already after working hours. The fortress grounds can roughly be divided into two parts, the underground and the above ground. Naturally, we first went down into the catacombs. And unexpectedly for us, there was almost nothing interesting there, just stone tunnels and a few remnants of old shackles.
Well, I hope you've missed the Venetians. If you don't get the reference, it's a little throwback to our last video from Greece and Crete. So, guess what? They managed to leave their mark here too. That's because Hvar used to be an important logistic and trading hub for the Venetian Republic, and to protect it from the bandits, they built this fortress.
It's a whole different story up top. First of all, there's a terrace where tourists can watch the sunrise. And that's definitely something I'd recommend doing here. Secondly, there's a huge, or rather gigantic cannon aimed at the sea. As you can easily guess, weapons like this were what defended the fortress.
You know what I feel is kind of missing here in this fortress? A bit of that Ukrainian style business vibe. Like, imagine small museums inside, exhibitions of tools and crafts from those times, maybe even a torture chamber for the thrill seekers, or a medieval style tavern where they grill meat and waiters walk around in costumes. You know, the tourist energy. But still, the fortress itself looks really impressive and it's definitely worth a visit.
But to me, despite these little details, its main advantage is still the panorama, which outweighs any shortcomings. And at this point, I'm simply out of words. This is exactly that kind of magic. The next day, our team of explorers headed to the north of the country to see another interesting location.
We are in Zadar, a city without which our Croatian story wouldn't be complete, and which is also located on the Adriatic coast. And literally, from the very first steps you can see that this is very ancient city. Just imagine, the history of the city began 3000 years ago. That means the city itself is older than some countries altogether.
I'd like to start our journey with the popular spot in Zadar that greets all visitors at the entrance to the city, the Terra Firma Gate. It was built back in the 1500s by the Venetians, when the city was part of the Venetian Republic. And perhaps the first thing that catches the eye is the winged lion of St. Mark above the central arch, the symbol of Venice, as if declaring who the real ruler here once was.
By the way, on top of the gate I noticed skulls of some goats or rams. Actually, I'm not sure if it's just decoration because they look very real. It's a little bit creepy.
The architect was Michele Sanmicheli, one of the most renowned Italian military engineers of the time. And although today is just a picturesque spot for photos, in the past it was a serious fortification with the moats and a bridge.
What's interesting is that on the front side the gate is so ornate, while on the other side it's just an ordinary building and no little lions.
Once travelers, merchants and soldiers passed through these gates. Today it's tourists with cameras, and we were among them.
Right next to the gate there is quite an interesting square, the Square of Five Wells. Its name speaks for itself, since here you'll find 5 stone wells from the 16th century. In the past this was where people came to draw fresh water.
Розкажи, що це таке, синочку? Криниця, яка піднімає водичку. Там глибоко?
The most fascinating thing about this spot is that it's surrounded by medieval buildings and the wild place looks like a movie set.
Zadar stands out noticeably on the Croatian coast. There's less glamour here than in Split or Dubrovnik, but more local flavor. Elderly women sell homemade figs right next to Roman ruins. And in the evening, young people hang out on the steps of the waterfront listening to the sound of the sea and music. Despite suffering heavy bombings during the war in the 90s, the city has revived and even become a cultural hub with various art installations that we'll come back to a bit later.
An incredibly beautiful and at the same time central square of Zadar. On it stands a small but very authentic church of St. Lawrence. As far as I understand, it still functions both as a church and a museum. By the way, this church was built back in the 11th century. Will you let me try the ice cream? Is it lemon? I don't know if you noticed, but here you won't find huge banners, flashy ads, even the umbrellas at the cafes and restaurants are very minimalistic, without big beer brand logos or anything like that. All this creates almost no visual noise. And thanks to that you walk around and truly feel this atmosphere of this ancient historic city. I really hope that one day our cities will embrace this idea too. And of course, one square you can't miss on any walk through the city is the Roman Forum. As I said, Zadar is a very ancient city, and throughout its 3000-year history, country, people and architecture have changed here. But as you can guess from the name, this square was founded by the Romans in the 1st century.
Of course, little remains of the original buildings, and only the foundations of the ancient structures hint that something once stood here. And it's not surprising, considering that the Roman Forum, which was the heart of the city, was built a full 2000 years ago. It was a bustling place with temples, markets and columns, frequented not only by ordinary people but also by Roman senators.
One of the legends says that people who broke the law were once tied to this column. For example, if someone stole something, they were chained here as a punishment. And what's interesting is that visually it looks like the remains of those chains are still here today.
To be honest, I'd tie myself to this column as well, because after the next location, you'll hardly feel like going back home. The main highlight of Zadar is, without a doubt, its waterfront. And it's not just about the panorama of mountains and islands, but about a unique attraction you won't find anywhere else. Built right into the pavement is the sea organ, a real musical instrument played by the waves. When water enters special openings, the system of pipes produces mysterious, harmonious sounds. It's something between a symphony of nature and experimental music, and it will definitely leave no one indifferent.
Honestly, the idea is really cool, but it kind of feels like someone picked up the musical instrument for the very first time and it's just learning to play. And it is incredibly beautiful and talented in its own way.
Right next to the musical art installation is another unusual piece called Greeting to the Sun. It's a large glass circle made of solar panels that accumulate energy throughout the day. When night falls, the platform comes alive with vibrant colors, creating a light show accompanied by the sounds of the sea organ. It feels like a dialogue between nature and technology, meditative, beautiful, and full of atmosphere.
As is our tradition, we try to check out the local spots because really, how can you explore a country without tasting its food? So right now we are heading out for dinner at one of the most popular restaurants here called Bruschetta. To really get taste of Croatian cuisine, I ordered one of the most traditional dishes I could find. And honestly, that's not so easy here, because the local food is heavily mixed with influences from all over the world. Anyway, what I've got in front of me is pashticada. It's beef that's slow cooked for hours, as far as I know, young beef. It's stewed in this special sweet and sour sauce. From what I know, it's actually a festive dish, often served at really important celebrations like weddings. It's also known as Dalmatian pashticada, since it originates as a main dish from Dalmatia. Enough talking, time to taste it. The beef is so tender, it just falls apart on my tongue without even chewing. They sprinkled it with fresh herbs too. Honestly, it tastes like a very home-style meal. There is a warmth to it, like I'm eating at the house of some Croatian relatives. It just has that cozy homemade flavor.
Besides the traditional cuisine, we definitely recommend trying seafood dishes, as there is a plenty of choice here for every taste. I hope you enjoyed our journey, and if you'd like to support our channel and watch the new episodes more often, you can donate us via PayPal.
Or you can do it through YouTube sponsorship by clicking the button below video.
Thank you and see you in the next time.
Thank you.